Passengers disembark an EgyptAir Airbus A-320 sitting on the tarmac of Larnaca airport after it was hijacked and diverted to Cyprus on March 29, 2016. A hijacker seized the Egyptian airliner and diverted it to Cyprus, before releasing all the passengers except 4 foreigners and the crew, officials and the airline said. George Michael, AFP, Getty Images Times. EgyptAir jet hijacker formally charged in. Cyprus Passengers disembark an EgyptAir Airbus A-320 sitting on the tarmac of Larnaca airport, after it was hijacked and diverted to Cyprus on March 29, 2016. A hijacker seized the Egyptian airliner and diverted it to Cyprus, before releasing all the passengers except 4 foreigners and the crew, officials and the airline said. George Michael, AFP, Getty Images. The man who hijacked an EgyptAir flight to Cairo and diverted it to Cyprus has been formally charged by Cypriot authorities. Seif El Din Mustafa is charged with hijacking, kidnapping, threatening violence, threatening use of explosives and civil aviation law violations, according to Cyprus police. Domestic woes. The incident began when Mustafa allegedly hijacked the EgyptAir flight because of his ex-wife, officials said Tuesday. The hijacking was not related to terrorism, a spokesman for the Cyprus Transport Ministry said. The incident ended relatively peacefully Tuesday when the plane's crew and passengers left the aircraft and authorities took the hijacker into custody. The hijacker was unstable? Homer Mavrommatis, director of the Cyprus Ministry of Foreign Affairs Crisis Management Center, told CNN. Egyptian authorities negotiated with him, but Mavrommatis said his motivation was not clear. He kept on changing his mind and asking for different things. Mavrommatis said one of his demands was that the plane be refueled so that he could travel to Istanbul, which was rejected. Zinon said authorities did, however, arrange for him to speak to his ex-wife. Mavrommatis said, "This is not Mustafa's first brush with the law," Egypt's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement. According to a security source, the 58-year-old has a criminal record that includes fraud, fake identity, theft and drug charges. The ministry said the Airbus 320 was carrying 70 people, 55 passengers, including the hijacker, 7 crew members and, because it was a connecting flight, an additional 8 crew members, according to EgyptAir's Dina. Foly. Officials said earlier that as many as 82 people were on the plane. Many of the passengers and crew were released during the early stages of the ordeal. Egypt's Civil Aviation Ministry said there was a bit of chaos. El Dibany told CNN in a phone interview that crew members didn't explain at first why they were collecting passports, and the captain never gave an official explanation. They just said that there was a problem and, "Please don't ask?" She said, after the cabin crew told passengers, in a very calm voice, that the plane had been hijacked. Some women started crying, and there was a bit of chaos. El Dibany said she was at the front of the plane and saw Mustafa from afar. The hijacker was behind a curtain in the cabin area at the back of the plane most of the time. He spoke only to the crew, she said. Eventually, the plane landed in Cyprus, where it's at for what El Dibany estimates was at least 45 minutes before Mustafa said the women and children on board could leave. She said, about 20 minutes later, he said, all the Egyptians can leave, and then at some point they got us a bus and we got off the plane, except some of the foreigners, non-Egyptians, said El Dibany. So we left on the bus and they brought us to someplace safe. She applauded how the crew, very professionally, handled the harrowing experience. They were keeping everyone calm. She said, they weren't panicking. They were in control. Threat of explosives. EgyptAir Flight 181 should have been a short one. It usually takes less than an hour to fly from Alexandria to the Egyptian capital. But during the flight, Mustafa falsely claimed that he had an explosive belt. forcing the plane to turn away from its destination and towards Cyprus. Pilot Omar El Gamal said. According to the Egyptian Civil Aviation Ministry, pilots will have a special signal they can use to airport traffic control, said Tom Ballantyne, chief correspondent for Oriental Aviation. It might be a code word or a signal they can use that will alert air traffic control that there is problem. Officials initially didn't know whether the hijacker really had an explosive belt, but they had no choice but to take the threat seriously. Egyptian Civil Aviation Minister Sharif Fathi said. Later, Mavrommatis said, it became clear when the hijacker gave himself up that he was not wearing explosives. What the pilots and crew might have thought were explosives turned out to be mobile phone cases, Zinon said, though it didn't elaborate. Egypt's Ministry of Foreign Affairs released a statement saying Mustafa used personal items to create the impression that he had an explosive vest, but the items he used had already passed through an airport X-ray machine and were deemed safe. Video released by Egypt's Interior Ministry shows Mustafa receiving a pat-down at the Alexandria airport before passing through security without incident. Old-fashioned type of terrorism? The hijacking was a more old-fashioned type of terrorism, said Sajan Gohil of the Asia-Pacific Foundation London, explaining that it was rare for such negotiations to take place. Egypt's Civil Aviation Ministry said the plane's foreign passengers included